This message is for Bucky Turco, a reporter at Animal New York.
Hi there, Bucky and Animal New York readers. My name is Dean Esme. You might notice this from my badge from the International Conference on Men's Issues. It's a yellow staff badge because I'm an operations manager, and also it's Bucky Turco of Animal New York's favorite color.
And I'm John Ribner. My name badge has my name on it, and it's in orange because I was an attendee at the first International Men's Issues Conference in St. Clair Shores, Michigan.
Now, what's pretty funny is he reported some quotes that were said at the press conference, which were accurate. You might argue that they were out of context, but he quoted those accurately. Nothing wrong with that,
No.
Is there? An accurate quote, right?
We like that.
Yeah. On the other hand, he was also tweeting things saying, like, we were stupid and saying stupid things, and then we started a tweet war back and forth with him, you, your wife, and me, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and it was just snarkage on Twitter back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But then he called me. Did you hear that call, John?
It was a wonderful call.
It was
I enjoyed it.
wonderful call. I was really surprised, and I was thinking, okay, I'll apologize. We were all getting snarky with each other. That's Twitter for you. But that wasn't enough for Bucky, was it?
No. He wouldn't let it go.
He wouldn't. John, you've had, 20 years of experience as a professional journalist, right?
That is correct.
Degree in journalism,
Mm-hmm.
Worked for newspapers.
Newspapers and magazines, yep.
Worked for okay. Yeah, and in journalism school, did you learn anything about what the difference is between a fact and an opinion?
Absolutely.
What's the basic difference?
Well, a fact is something that can easily be verified. As in, I'm John Ribner. I have credentials. I have licensures, things that can be verified. An opinion is something that just somebody thinks or feels or believes but can't really be verified, like Bucky Turco is an idiot. That's an opinion.
Oh, okay. So if Bucky is taking notes, and we hope he is, because it might help him with his journalism skills. If you report that Bucky Turco said that men have all the power, would you be reporting a fact?
Well, he said it to me, so yes. Yeah, that would be quoting an attribution to Bucky.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
But that would be a fact that Bucky was stating?
No, I think it was Bucky's opinion.
Yeah, and I would say it's a pretty dumbass opinion, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, we could also say women have all the groceries, so they have all the food, but...
That's right. Women do all the grocery shopping, so women must have all the food. It's
a similar fallacious statement using Bucky's logic, I guess.
Using Bucky's logic,
if you could call it that.
So the men in prison have all the power. The men who are homeless have all the power. The men losing their kids have all the power. Sure. Yeah.
All the men committing suicide, they must have the power too.
Yeah. See, those would be opinions, and I don't know what I would think, but I would think that's also would qualify as a dumbass opinion. But it would still be opinion, right?
An opinion.
So Bucky also had some things to say about your wife, who he seemed to think was my wife.
Yeah, and that's really why we wore these our name badges from an event. What was it, 2 weeks ago now?
Yeah. And
I even wore the same shirt that I wore at the event, just so Bucky might now remember that it was me you interviewed, Bucky, not Dean.
Cut that out.
Dean? John. John. Dean.
Dean.
You see? Do you remember me now, Bucky? I'm the one that you said, oh, come on. What are you talking about? Men have all the power.
I know. We're totally identical, like identical twins, and you can barely tell us apart, except that I have the long, luxurious locks.
Epic beard, I have a journalism degree.
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm just an independent journalist. I don't know what Bucky would call himself.
That's really my concern. What are you, Bucky? Are you a journalist? You didn't act like one. Not if you got us confused. You even took my name off my name badge when you interviewed me, dude. How could then I become Dean Esme?
Now, you wrote an article.
I did.
About the conference, and you mentioned Bucky Turco in passing.
I sure did.
And I wasn't going to write anything more about Bucky until he made that bizarre fucking phone call to me. Mm-hmm. But I also remember he was making fun of our children, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He's making definitely some nasty, references or
to their behavior.
Yeah, to their behavior.
Yeah. My ex-wife is the mother of 2 of my sons. My ex-wife
is my current wife and mother of my 1 son.
Oh, and what was it that he was saying? He was making fun of...
He basically, if I recall correctly, he said to you on the phone something to the extent of, you made your wife, meaning my wife, your ex-wife, either go outside or sit down on the couch as if to maybe suggest some sort of like chauvinistic relationship there, and you sit over here, little woman, and watch these children while us men do the men things. That I think that's Bucky. Come on, let's be honest. That's what you were getting at.
Couldn't we have asked her for an interview? Because she was sitting right there, and you had a full 3-day pass to the event. You had plenty of time.
3 days.
Yeah, that's what you had to pass for because you asked for it. So he referred to the kids as unruly. And I think you could make a case that they are sometimes unruly. Is there a reason why they're unruly?
Well, yeah, there's a reason why some people might consider our children unruly. They both have autism. And in the case of my son, he's an eloper. And since, Bucky, you don't like to do research, I'll tell you what an eloper is. It basically means a young child who will just run away from their parents. They will not stop, no matter how much you yell to them to stop.
They might even go into water.
They may go into water or traffic. It happens a lot. Again, Bucky, I would tell you to research it, but we already know you don't do that. So there you go. The first one's free, Bucky.
The second, my son, who's also autistic, he was actually a huge help. He was working at the counter with my wife, not his wife.
His wife.
Their stepmother. He's my kid's stepfather, you see. Which, by the way, as a journalist, wouldn't it fascinate you that at a men's issues conference, two guys who are, you're my kid's stepfather, my wife's there, my ex-wife's there, all of our kids are there. Would that make an interesting human interest story for a journalist? That is a
story in and of itself that would obviously suggest the bonds of friendship that can be formed through men's rights advocacy, I would think.
And just in general, throw away a lot of the stupid stereotypes. Maybe a journalist would find that an interesting story. I don't think Bucky was acting very much like a journalist.
I have my doubts.
Anyway, my son was also there at the ticket counter, and he was helping. He folded up a lot of these because he likes things in order. And he was
Very
going
much
up.
So.
Yeah, they got to be in order.
Yep.
And he was going up to some people, and like their lanyard might be like this, or it might be flipped around like that. And he's always very friendly with a smile on his face, right?
Yes.
He would just walk up to people and go, and then smile and say hi. And
just making sure everything was the way it should be, because again, as an autistic child, and particularly him, he loves things to be in order.
Exactly.
It's his way.
It's a common autism thing. Might want to research autism sometimes.
Wait a minute, Bucky doesn't do research.
Apparently he doesn't. I'm thinking at this point, as a journalism, picking on women that you don't bother to interview or find anything out about, and picking on autistic children that you don't bother figuring things out about. That's kind of 0 for 2 on Bucky. Now I want to ask your opinion as a journalist. Bucky Turco actually wrote 2 stories, and the more egregiously inaccurate one, in my opinion, just as an opinion, was that he said that he asked the cops if there were any death threats, and they said no. I don't think that he asked sufficient questions to get an answer on that. As a journalist, what are some questions you might ask me about these so-called death threats?
Well, first of all, I would ask, where did the death threats come from? How did you hear about these death threats?
Well, we're not 100% sure where they came from. What we got was a registered letter from Shannon Dunavant of the Doubletree Hilton saying there were death threats and threats to property damage. That's how we heard about it.
So then, when the person from the original location where you were going to have the event told you about these death threats, what did she suggest you guys do about that?
She sent us a registered letter and said we were required to hire police protection.
And this would have been for the event when you were going to host it at the Doubletree in Detroit. Is that correct?
That's totally correct.
Okay.
And we did some research, and we found out how much money that would cost, and we did a fundraiser to raise that amount of money, and we told people we needed it for security, to hire police, and to hire some lawyers to help us out. That's what we did in the fundraiser.
As per the Doubletree's requirements.
That's right.
So why did you not have the event at the Detroit Doubletree and instead move it to the VFW Hall in St. Clair Shores then?
That's a pretty obvious question you would think a reporter would ask. The reason is that even though we had raised the money and let them know we were looking into hiring the cops, the Doubletree kicked us out anyway. Because
of the threats?
We're not clear. Basically, they gave us 5 days to come up with all of this, and even though we had the money, we didn't have everything lined up perfectly. They didn't appear to want to give us an extension. They just sent us a note and say, if you don't have this all finished by 5 p.m. on this day, you're done. And we were still struggling to get everything lined up. So they didn't want us anymore.
So you relocated to St. Clair Shores, the VFW Hall. And because you had the money raised, and because you took as any serious person would do, you took the death threat seriously. I'm understanding then that you hired St. Clair Shores police officers to be at the St. Clair Shores event. Is that correct?
It seemed wise. We had told people we wanted the money for police protection and lawyers and security in general. Well, let's use it for what we asked for it for. And so we had to give it to St. Clair Shores Police. And
well, that would explain why maybe the St. Clair Shores Police who were hired to be at the event weren't maybe not aware of the death threats, because the death threats were made to a hotel in Detroit.
Well, yeah, actually, I can tell you that we did report that there were death threats to the St. Clair Shores Chief of Police, which he can verify. Anybody doing journalistic fact-checking could call the St. Clair Shores Police Chief.
One phone call to the police chief.
And say, were you informed about that? I say, we'd probably say yes. But I would think the average cop sitting there at the event would have said, well, no, we haven't heard anything, because they wouldn't have. Because
they were just...
They pulled the note.
Boots on the ground. They were sent to
that
be
would
at
be
the
my
event,
opinion.
and that's it.
So if somebody wants to do more investigation, maybe they want to do that. But I would think that those were solid questions a journalist would ask, wouldn't you, John?
Absolutely.
You still taking notes, Bucky?
So, Dean, I heard that initially the reason you guys relocated the event is that there wasn't sufficient facilities or space at the Doubletree, Detroit. Is that correct?
Yeah, we did originally report that as the reason, or one of the reasons. That's because we didn't want to get the Doubletree people in trouble. We were still hoping to maintain a good relationship with them. In point of fact, it is true. The Doubletree misrepresented their capacity. They only had capacity for a 175 when they had told us they had capacity for 250. They had misrepresented that, and that's one of the things our lawyers sent them a note about. The truth is, we probably would have found a way to stay there anyway. So, but the fact that we moved to VFW did mean we had more space. And by the way, whatever...
And a glitter ball.
And a glitter ball, yeah. And by the way, despite the misreporting of several places, we had attendance total in excess of that. The VFW gave us a lot more room. The VFW gave us extra rooms, so we had 2 rooms upstairs in addition to the main hall.
For the breakout sessions.
So in a way, it was a mixed blessing, even though it made our lives hell. So, yeah, the move was... we really wanted to be soft pedaling it, I've got to admit. We were trying to soft pedal it to be nice to the Doubletree and Shannon Donovan at first and say it was just for that. But the fact is, no, it was more than that. Because we hadn't raised the security stuff fast enough, they made us leave anyway.
Right.
So.
Well, that does clear it up for me. Again, Bucky, I just asked him a question.
I think this has to qualify as a journalist. If you have a 3-day event with a 2-3 hour press conference before it, and you only go to the press conference, would you assert as a journalist that you were at the conference?
You were not at the entire event. No,
Yeah.
you might have attended the press conference that kicked the event off, but I mean, common sense, each of the speakers spoke for, 5 or 10 minutes?
Yeah, which...
You can't build an entire 3-day event off of wonderful speakers, but they were speaking, it was more of an introductory.
That's right, and there was something like 7 speakers
easily.
who were not at the press conference, and there were several speakers at the press conference who did not speak at the main event.
Right.
So how can you... well, as a journalist, I think I would owe my readers a little more than that, than just saying I went to the press conference and I know all I need to know. And would you say... I don't like the word media bias because it's so easy to throw around, but would you say when Bucky actually states he wouldn't want to listen to more than 5 minutes of what anybody had to say, was he doing his job as a journalist?
No, he was allowing his own personal, political, socio-political feelings to factor into his decision as to whether he was going to stay there or not, and clearly he wasn't. And you missed a lot. You missed a lot of good stuff, Bucky, really.
So, in general, do you think he did his job in reporting to his audience on what happened at that conference?
Absolutely not.
Do you have any more? You have any more tips for Bucky as a journalist?
Yeah, Bucky, pay attention, do your research, open your ears, and put your own politics and personal beliefs to the side. Get into the story, man. Find the story. It's not about you. It's about the story, brother.
Wow. Is that what they teach you in journalism class?
That's what I learned.
All right. See you, Bucky.
Bye, Buck.
Oh, by the way, before we close, I forgot this. I remember your wife said something really funny when she heard the call. She called Bucky a cunt.
In fact, she calls him Bucky Cunt.
She calls him Bucky cunt now. Yeah, I kind of like that. I guess that just shows you what kind of woman she is. Meek, submissive, mild.
Even-tempered, generous. Well, actually, she is. But
she actually is all those things.
And Bucky, you would have found this out if you would have interviewed her instead of just assuming she's some wallflower that gets, I guess, ordered about by her husband, which is me, but he thought was you.
That's right, because we look so much, very much alike.
Twins.
Twins, pretty much.
Yeah.
That had the badly behaved kids, right? And that made your wife sit outside the main audience area? Your kids were, like, pulling people's, like, lanyards, and then you made your wife sit outside the main audience area? That's you, right?
Nope. No, let me clarify something for you, Bucky. And by the way, I'm not mad. I think we have a disagreement, and we're sniping back and forth on Twitter, and that always gets on, inhuman. So let me just clarify something. That was my ex-wife you were talking to, and her husband. And you're sniping back with Rosemary Ribner now. That's my ex-wife. So I'm just getting it clear for you. Also, I'm not mad at you. I just think you made an error. All you got to do, Bucky, is say, okay, we have a disagreement. I think your press conference was part of the main event, but I admit I did not attend most of your conference. Because admit it, Bucky, we had a 3-day conference and you were there for 2 hours tops.
I listened to 5 minutes of what they said, and it was absurd. Why would I return to listen to 3 hours of what they said?
Okay.
What, like, to torture myself?
Okay, Bucky, may I quote you as saying you only listened to 5 minutes of what they said?
Dean, you could quote me on whatever the fuck you want to quote me on. Quote me on whatever the fuck you want to quote me on. Quote me on whatever the fuck you want to quote me on. Quote me on whatever the fuck you want to quote me on.